at adieu. When the clouds roll by, I'll come to you. Then the skies will seem more blue down in Lover's Lane.
Tootsie, don't cry. The choo-choo train that takes me away from you, no words can tell how sad it makes me. Kiss me, Tootsie.
I'd seen a number of very interesting things as I flew over southern England. It was the first time I'd ever been abroad.
Endeavor to teach you time and again that there can be no coming out of this depression until what you are goes to sustain your wife and your children. But somehow or other you're satisfied to sustain the wives and children of those.
Time like our time, and no one like you. Well, she's so sweet, she brings me lots of joy. Why, she thinks that a goblet is a sailor's little boy. I love her, that's easy to see. It's Kansas City kitty for me. Well, she's so dumb, sometimes it almost kills. Why, she thought Rudy Valley was a place between two hills. I love her, that's easy
the Constitution of the United States, so help you God.
I, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
For the theater, heat! Heat! Heat!
Riding majestically toward us like some great feather. And these giant flagships standing here, the American airline flagships, waiting to rise into all points in the United States when they get the ship moored. It's practically standing still now. They've dropped ropes out of the nose of the ship. The rain had slacked up a little bit. The back motors of the ship are just holding it just enough to keep it from... It bursts into flames. Get it started. It's crashing terrible. Oh, my, get out of the way, please. It's bursting into flames, and it's falling on the mooring mast and all the folks between us. This is terrible. This is one of the worst catastrophes in the world. Oh, it's like 400 or 500 feet into the sky. It's a terrific crash, ladies and gentlemen. The smoke and the flames now, and the flame is crashing to the ground, not quite to the mooring mast.
30.000, wieder 240.000, dann 62.000, dann 78.000, jetzt sind es 30.000, 107.000, 137.000 und heute 200.
Alors qu'elle a toujours étonné le monde, la France ne peut pas mourir.
Whatever the terms imposed on France may be, it can pretty safely be assumed that they will be such as to make it impossible for France ever to become dangerous to Germany again, unless, of course, Hitler should be overthrown.
Von den ersten Rundfunkberichte vom Beginn der Verhandlungen über den Waffenstillstand mit Frankreich im Walde von Compiègne.
What General Weygand has called the Battle of France is over. The Battle of Britain is about to begin. Hitler knows that he will have to break us in this island or lose the war. Let us therefore brace ourselves to our duty. So bear ourselves that if the British Empire and its commonwealths last for 1,000 years, men will still say, this was their finest hour.
In the course of the last 15 or 20 minutes, there's been considerable action up here. There's a building with 2 windows gone. Out of one window there waves something that looks like a white bed sheet. A window curtain, swinging free in this night breeze. It looks as though it were being shaken by a ghost. There are a great many ghosts around these buildings in London, and some of them companies of ghosts.
We interrupt this program to bring you a special news bulletin. The Japanese have attacked Pearl Harbor, Hawaii by air, President Roosevelt has just announced. The attack also was made on all naval and military activities on the principal island of Oahu.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan.
Our own ship has just gave its warning whistles, and now the flak is coming up in the sky. Looks like we're going to have a night tonight. Give us a line. Another one coming over. And a cruiser right alongside of us is pouring enough. Something burning is falling down through the sky. And circling down. Maybe a hit plane. They got one.
We are on the beach today, on D-Day. We've just come in. We caught a ride in a small boat which came in from our LST loaded with 1,000 pounds of TNT, half a ton of high explosive on this beach, which is still under considerable enemy gunfire. These boys are apparently having a pretty tough time in here on the beaches. It's not very pleasant. It's exposed, and it must have been a rugged fight to get it. Looking out to sea, all we can see of the vast invasion fleet which is assembled for us are the silhouettes of the big warships, the battleships and cruisers, which have been putting a steady bombardment against the enemy positions all day.
My fellow Americans, last night when I spoke with you about the fall of Rome, I knew at that moment that troops of the United States and our allies were crossing the Channel in another and greater operation. It has come to pass with success thus far.
This is Supreme Headquarters, Allied Expeditionary Force. General Dwight D. Eisenhower.
People of Western Europe. A landing was made this morning on the coast of France by troops of the Allied Expeditionary Force. This landing is part of the concerted United Nations plan for the liberation of Europe, made in conjunction with our great Russian allies.
Almighty God, our sons, pride of our nation, this day have set upon a mighty endeavor, a struggle to preserve our republic, our religion, and our civilization, and to set free a suffering humanity.
This is James Cassidy with the American forces in France. Today, American forces in strength are within actual sight of Germany. Some of them in patrols have already crossed into Germany itself. I learned that the American patrols had gone over the border when I went up to the front lines of the Third Army late last night. Because of heavy enemy resistance between Metz and Nancy, I was unable to proceed further. But early today, with advanced units of the Third Army, I was able to look across into Germany itself. A vivid demonstration of how far this tremendous army has gone and how fast it has traveled.
We proceeded to the small courtyard. There were 2 rows of bodies stacked up like cordwood. They were thin and very white. Some of the bodies were terribly bruised, though there seemed to be little flesh to bruise. Some had been shot through the head, but they bled but little. It appeared that most of the men and boys had died of starvation. They had not been executed. But the manner of death seemed unimportant. Murder had been done at Buchenwald. I pray you to believe what I have said about Buchenwald. I have reported what I saw and heard, but only part of it. If I have offended you by this rather mild account of Buchenwald, I am not in the least sorry.
Adventure on the American frontier with the Weston family and Daniel Boone in the exciting days following the American Revolution.
We interrupt this program to bring you a special news bulletin from CBS World News. A press association has just announced that President Roosevelt is dead. The president died of a cerebral hemorrhage. All we know so far is that the president died at Warm Springs in Georgia.
I can see the horses drawing the case on. And most generally, folks having as tough a time as I am trying to see it. And behind us is the car bearing the man on whose shoulders now fall the terrific burdens and responsibilities that were handled so well by the man to whose body we're paying our last respects now. God bless him, President Truman. We return you now to the studio.
I only wish that Franklin D. Roosevelt had lived to witness this day. General Eisenhower informs me that the forces of Germany have surrendered to the United Nations. The flags of freedom fly all over Europe.
Delaying the start of our scheduled program to bring you the latest direct report on the atomic bomb attack on Japan. CBS World News takes you now to Guam. Webley Edwards reporting.
The explosion was a big ball of fire. Anyone not having dark glasses would have received a visual shock several miles away. One of the crew members said, "My God," when he saw what had happened. What had been Hiroshima was a white mountain of smoke, and when we saw it first, it was already up to 25,000 feet. About 1,000 feet off the ground, it looked like boiling dust. It extended over most of the city, churning down there. And the center of the impact was in the center of the city. And the boiling continued several minutes as we watched. Then the mushroom of smoke broke off, and another developed below it. This one bomb is the equivalent of a 2,000 B-29 raid. This is Webley Edwards at Guam. I return you to New York.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
The world will note that the first atomic bomb was dropped on Hiroshima, a military base. We won the race of discovery against the Germans. We have used it in order to shorten the agony of war, in order to save the lives of thousands and thousands of young Americans. We shall continue to use it until we completely destroy Japan's power to make war.
Columbia's news headquarters in New York, Bob Trout speaking. This is the supreme hour, 7 o'clock Eastern Wartime. The correspondents of the White House have entered President Truman's office. The Prime Minister of Great Britain is about to begin his broadcast. The Japanese have accepted our terms fully. That is the word we have just received from the White House in Washington. And I didn't expect to hear a celebration here in our newsroom in New York, but you can hear one going on behind me. The Japanese have accepted fully the surrender terms of the United Nations. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of the Second World War.
I now invite the representatives of the Emperor of Japan and the Japanese government and the Japanese Imperial General Headquarters to sign the instrument of surrender at the places indicated. Pray that peace be now restored to the world and that God will preserve it always. These proceedings are closed.
I've got you under my skin. I've got you deep in the heart of me. So deep in my heart that you're really a part of me.
Poverty and tyranny are their rewards. That false philosophy is communism. Communism is based on the belief that man is so weak and inadequate that he is unable to govern himself and therefore requires the rule of strong masters.
The question we have had to face is whether the communist plan of conquest can be stopped without a general war. Our government and other countries associated with us in the United Nations believe that the best chance of stopping it without a general war is to meet the attack in Korea and defeat it there. I have therefore considered it essential to relieve General MacArthur so that there would be no doubt or confusion as to the real purpose and aim of our policy.
My future associates in the executive branch of government, join me and beseech you that thou wilt make full and complete our dedication to the service of the people in this throng and their fellow citizens everywhere.
No sense of decency, sir, at long last. Have you left no sense of decency?
I know this hurts you, Mr. Welch.
I'll
but
say it
may I
hurts.
say, Mr. Chairman, as a point of personal privilege, I'd like to finish this.
Senator, I think it hurts you too, sir.
I'd like to finish this. Mr. Welch here has been filibustering this hearing. He's been talking day after day about the way he wants to get anyone tainted with communism out before sundown.
And behind the Iron Curtain, where men slave in the darkness of communist tyranny, our actions here this week will give men renewed hope in their struggle to be free.
They have proved again, and indeed, this launching of the satellite proves that they can hurl an object a considerable distance. Suddenly, all America seems to become scientists, and I'm hearing many, many ideas. And I think that within time, given time, satellites will be able to transmit to the Earth some kind of information with respect to what they see on the Earth or what they find on the Earth. But I think that that period is a long ways off.
General Kennedy, do solemnly swear
that you will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country.
The world knows that there is no reason for a crisis over Berlin today, and that if one develops, it will be caused by the Soviet Union and their government's attempt to invade the rights of others and manufacture tension. A city does not become free merely by calling it a free city.
We have in the program of the United States a solid step-by-step forward-moving program with each step building on the next, and our own program goes far beyond the orbiting of one man. The step beyond Mercury is the orbiting of a three-man laboratory around the Earth, and then the sending of this same laboratory around the moon with a re-entry into the Earth's atmosphere.
If a Negro baby is born there and a white baby is born next door, that Negro baby's chance of finishing high school is about 60% of that baby. His chance of getting through college is about a third of that baby. His chance of being unemployed is 4 times that baby. His chance of owning a house is 1/3 of that. His chance of educating his children is how much? His chance of being a federal district judge is non-existent.
We interrupt this program for a CBS Radio Net Alert Bulletin.
President Kennedy and Governor John Connally of Texas were both hit by a would-be assassin's bullets as they toured downtown Dallas in an open automobile a short while ago. That is the latest word that has just come in from Dallas on United Press International. The Associated Press in its first report says that President Kennedy was shot just as his motorcade left downtown Dallas. Mrs. Kennedy, who was riding with him, jumped up and grabbed Mr. Kennedy and cried, "Oh, no." The President of the United States is dead. John F. Kennedy has died of the wounds received in an assassination in Dallas less than an hour ago.
The basement floor of the Dallas City Hall, and that's a scuffle on the basement floor. It seems to concern photographers.
He has been shot. Oswald has been shot.
Lee Oswald.
Oswald has been
we
shot.
are to switch now.
Police.
I give you my pledge. We shall never let you down.
Mike, give me some cover.
We are not going out to fight the cops. I mean, we basically hope that this is going to be a non-violent situation in this park. However, if the violence comes, we will soak it up.
The people are taking back their country.
Well, there's no objection from the standpoint of his being a Negro. I think this nominee is, from the standpoint of his legal training and experience, would compare favorably with other members of the court. That is not the issue with me.
No other ethnic group in the history of our society has ever had to have 100% Pollyanna. For every Negro who threw a rock in Detroit, there are 100 Negroes who are dying at that moment in Vietnam.
Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will.
My thanks to all of you, and now it's on to Chicago, and let's win there. Thank you.
If there's a doctor in the house, I want to see him right here. Everybody else, please stay back. Please stay back. Everybody else, just please stay back. Just a doctor, come right here. There's a doctor in the house.
If I were elected, instead of riots and protests, we'd have dancing in the streets.
Please charge the crowd. I didn't think I'd get hit because, like, I'm a medic. I mean, like they said, medic, I'll give you a medic. And then they beat me.
All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Each and every American. In leaving it, I do so with this prayer. May God's grace be with you in all the days ahead.
Under difficult circumstances, we are profoundly grateful to our Commander-in-Chief and to our nation for this day. God bless America.
God bless America.
Welcome home. Stand beside her and
to go for main engine start. 7, 6, and we have main engine start. 4, 3, 2, 1. We have SRB ignition and liftoff, and the shuttle has cleared the tower.
Houston, controlling now. Throttle step down to 90%.
Dr. Jarvis? Thank you. Just make a very initial brief statement. The heart has been successfully implanted.
The patient is on his own artificial heart. He has a blood pressure equivalent to an 18-year-old man and essentially doing very well.
Pressure right at 500 psi.
On the south tip of Grenada, 82nd Airborne soldiers today fired on enemy positions just a few miles away. The tour given journalists today was limited to the south end of Grenada. The action is described as mopping up, but it is clear Marines and soldiers still have plenty of work cut out for them, and it is also clear they will not be leaving in the next few days.
I asked the Democratic Convention to nominate Geraldine Ferraro of New York to run with me for the White House.
There's an electricity in the air, an excitement, a sense of new possibilities, and of pride. My good friend Charlie Rangel, the congressman from Harlem, said to me, "Jerry, my heart is full. So is mine."
Well, as you can see, we're having lots of fun up here trying to figure out what happens to the human body in zero-G. I've been doing a number of space motion fix studies the last few days, and today the electrodes on my head are to do an electroencephalogram to look at the brain waves and see what effect there is there. 116 feet, 75, 45. Gear down in lock. Touchdown. Nose gear descending down. Touchdown.
There comes a time when we heed a certain call, when the world must come together as one. There are people dying. Oh, when it's time to lend a hand to life.
Mission Control, Houston, individual last time is 6 days, 23 hours, 56 minutes. SWAT team is home.
Pretending day by day that somewhere will soon make a change. We are.
Ladies and gentlemen, from Opryland Hotel in Nashville, Tennessee, this is the Radio Television News Directors Association 1985 and First International Awards Banquet, honoring the best radio and television reporting by local stations during the past year. And now our host for the evening, the president of RTNDA, Vice President and News Director of RKO radio station WOR in New York City, Mr. Lou Adler. The purpose of the RTNDA Awards program is to promote excellence in electronic journalism. The responsibility and power of today's media and their impact on society is awesome. It is a responsibility that cannot be taken lightly. And it is a responsibility which must constantly be measured against the principles of journalistic freedom. It is those who do that best that we wish to honor. The international winners in each of 4 categories are selected from the winners in the 14 RTNDA regions. The 4 categories are Spot News, Investigative Reporting, Continuing Coverage, and our most prestigious award for outstanding overall news coverage, the Edward R. Murrow Award. Ed Murrow died 20 years ago this year, and there are now young journalists about to enter the workforce to compete for an award named for a man they may have heard of, but whom they do not know. Here is CBS News correspondent Charles Carroll.
We think we've come so far in broadcasting the news. See how small our microphones have become. We forget sometimes that the size of the microphone really doesn't matter. What matters is what is said into it. This is an old, battered, out-of-date ribbon mic, must weigh 5 pounds. Here's what was said into it.
Hello, America. This is Edward Murrow speaking from London. You can have little understanding of the life in London these days. There are no words to describe the thing that is happening. The courage of the people, the flash and roar of the guns rolling down the streets, the stench of the air raid shelters. In 3 or 4 hours, people must get up and go to work, just as though they had a full night's rest, free from the rumble of guns, and the wonder that comes when they wake and listen in the dead hours of the night. No one could avoid being impressed with the patience and calm determination of these people who dwell in little houses. This morning, Mr. Churchill walked through the East End after a heavy raid. The people cheered him. He said, "They act as though I had brought them a great victory," and there were tears in his eyes.
When the war was over and Ed Murrow was about to leave London, the BBC technicians went into the studio, cut the cable to the microphone he always used, and handed it to him. This is it. He came home to start something new.
CBS Television, in cooperation with its affiliated television stations, presents the distinguished reporter and news analyst, Edward R. Murrow, in See It Now. Now, speaking from the actual control room of Studio 41, is the editor of See It Now, Edward R. Murrow.
This is an old team trying to learn a new trade. When we started this series of programs, we had to decide where to do it from. We decided to do it right here from the studio. My purpose will be not to get in your light any more than I can, to lean over the cameraman's shoulder occasionally and say a word which may help to illuminate or explain what is happening. We are, as newcomers to this medium, rather impressed by the whole thing. Impressed, for example, that I can turn to Don Hewitt here and say, Don, will you push a button and bring in the Atlantic coast?
This is Camera 1 at a point of vantage on Governor's Island. There's the Narrows right down that way. There's where the big ships sail out to Europe and all other parts of the world.
Good, thank you very much. Now, on Monitor 2, may we have the Pacific coast, please?
Hello, New York. This is the Golden Gate, the waters of San Francisco Bay leading out to the Pacific Ocean. It's rather hazy out here, Mr. Murrow.
Thank you very much indeed, gentlemen. We, for our part, are considerably impressed. For the first time, man has been able to sit at home and look at 2 oceans at the same time. We're impressed with the importance of this medium. We shall hope to learn to use it and not to abuse it.
$8 bucks, and you guarantee you if you pull today and we pull what we got to pull today, you'll have $11 in your pocket.
This scene is not taking place in the Congo. It has nothing to do with Johannesburg or Cape Town. It is not Nyasaland or Nigeria. This is Florida. These are citizens of the United States, 1960. This is a shape-up for migrant workers. One farmer looked at this and said, "We used to own our slaves. Now we just rent them." They are the migrants, workers in the sweatshops of the soil, the harvest of shame. The migrants have no lobby. Only an enlightened, aroused, and perhaps angered public opinion can do anything about the migrants. The people you have seen have the strength to harvest your fruit and vegetables. They do not have the strength to influence legislation. Maybe we do. Good night and good luck. No one familiar with the history of his country can deny that congressional committees are useful. It is necessary to investigate before legislating. But the line between investigating and persecuting is a very fine one, and the junior senator from Wisconsin has stepped over it repeatedly. His primary achievement has been in confusing the public mind as between the internal and the external threats of communism. We must not confuse dissent with disloyalty. We must remember always that accusation is not proof, and that conviction depends upon evidence and due process of law. We will not walk in fear one of another. The actions of the junior senator from Wisconsin have caused alarm and dismay amongst our allies abroad and given considerable comfort to our enemies. And whose fault is that? Not really his. He didn't create this situation of fear. He merely exploited it, and rather successfully. Cassius was right. The fault, dear Brutus, is not in our stars, but in ourselves.
Now, ordinarily, I would not take time out from the important work at hand to answer Murrow. However, in this case, I feel justified in doing so because Murrow is the symbol, the leader, and the cleverest of the jackal pack, which is always found at the throat of anyone who dares to expose individual communists and traitors. And I am compelled by the facts to say to you that Mr. Edward R. Murrow, as far back as 20 years ago, was engaged in propaganda for communist causes. Here is a Communist Daily Worker of March 9, containing 7 articles and a principal editorial, all attacking McCarthy. And the same issue lists Mr. Murrow's program as, listen to this, one of tonight's best bets on TV.
And Murrow's answer.
When the record is finally written, as it will be one day, it will answer the question, who has helped the communist cause and who has served his country better, Senator McCarthy or I? I would like to be remembered, if at all, by the answer to that question.
He hired or encouraged or otherwise promoted the careers of Hudlett, Calmer, Howard K. Smith, Winston Burdett, Collingwood, Severide, Shirer, Schonbrun, Shore, Lasser, Downs, Trout, Kendrick, the first great news team of broadcasting. And if he could have done it over, would he have done it differently?
Yes, I think so. I think I would have taken more time to find the people, although I think in retrospect I was blind lucky in the people I did find. And I do remember receiving cables from New York when we started building that staff, 37, 38, 39, saying that some of the boys who were reporting did not sound like announcers, their diction was not quite perfect and so forth, and I kept sending back messages saying, I am not looking for announcers, I'm looking for people who know what they're talking about, because I believe in due course the audience will come to appreciate that fact, and I think they did.
But what about the problem of ego and personality in broadcast journalism?
There is a danger that the individual comes to believe that just because his voice is amplified and reaches halfway around the world, that he is therefore more intelligent, more discerning than he was when his voice only reached from one end of the bar to the other. This monopolized opportunity to sit behind a microphone, I think, is a heady sort of whine and tends, on occasion, to cause the individual reporter to think that he is more omniscient than any reporter ever is. I started out as director of talks and education, and that, by the way, included religion. That was in 1935. And then went to Europe in the beginning of 1937. At that time, the European staff consisted of one person, and I was it. We did news. We hired a newspaper reporter to do it. But it all changed at the time of the Anschluss in 1938. And from then on, I started broadcasting myself, not because I had any ability at it, but because all the reporters were so busy we couldn't get them to stop doing their own jobs. So Bill Shirer and I started broadcasting. And the first multiple point pickup, where we moved directly from one capital to another, and I think the first one involved Vienna, Paris, and London in March of '38.
This is Edward Murrow speaking from Vienna. It's now nearly 2:30 in the morning, and Herr Hitler has not yet arrived. No one seems to know.
For many years, I have received credit for what other people have done. And I would think it's fair and honest to say that some part of my heart will stay with CBS. I am grateful to the management of CBS, grateful to the affiliates who have carried what we have done, grateful particularly for the friendship of my colleagues and superiors, and I wish you all good luck and good night.
He lived a life, not an apology. He is alive to all of us who knew him. He died 20 years ago this year. At CBS News, he still looks at us from a plaque on the wall every time we enter or leave the building. We think we've come so far in broadcasting the news. The truth is, we haven't yet even come back up to him.